like only yesterday I was making a video about Queen Cleopatra Netflix docudrama produced by Jada Pinkett Smith after Greeks got angry at the fact that the show portrayed her as a black queen, basing all this information on one person's grandma's opinion.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
It was the era of race-swapping characters, but only one way, of course, because it is okay to make a historical figure that was of Macedonian descent black, but God forbid you tried to do the same to a historical black hero and turn them white. Now we are dealing with a whole different thing, the gay swapping era, or maybe a gay washing era. For some reason, Netflix is super focused on Greek history and attempts to really Americanize it. Many people say that the new documentary about Great Alexander is yet another way to push the modern woke agenda on the platform. Because somehow this weird idea creeps in that if the Great Alexander was in fact gay, that justifies the LGBTQ cult of our modern times. It makes it all okay. They have a new gay ancient hero. I presume there will be someone from the Great Alexander documentary who will block me on Twitter when this episode is published. Just like it happened with the actress playing Cleopatra. I think my commentary was just too real. But as you guys know, I live in Cyprus, I am very connected with Greek culture, and I am bringing to you a perspective on this subject from our side of the world. Here is a short clip that claims and explains, very briefly, because it's a much larger subject, as you can imagine, that Great Alexander wasn't gay.
Stop scrolling and learn something. Was Alexander the Great gay? The only real question here is about a lifelong companion and friend of Alexander named Hephaestion, who was with him from his childhood through his conquests. When Hephaestion died, Alexander did not eat for days and had to be dragged away from Hephaestion's dead body by force. However, it is crucial to consider that close male friendships were highly valued in ancient Greece, and expressions of emotional attachment between men were not necessarily indicative of sexual relationships. One of his most famous love interests was Roxana, a beautiful and spirited princess from Bactria. Alexander was captivated by her charm and married her in a grand ceremony, forging a powerful alliance. Roxana became the mother of Alexander's only legitimate heir, Alexander IV. So no, Alexander was not gay. Subscribe for more.
And of course, there were comments like, "The mourning of a friend is now homosexual?" That seems very stupid, especially considering Alexander had a harem of more than 300 women. And this one, Alexander and his companions were schooled together in Mieza, where Aristotle and others were teachers. They were close from early days. That's the way it was back then. Close friendships and growing up together while mastering warfare. That's how they managed to work together perfectly. Well, claims of Great Alexander being gay definitely sparked a reaction from Greeks. News algorithm tweeted, "Greece, Alexander was not gay. Netflix's docuseries on Alexander the Great faces major backlash from Greek politicians who have called it poor quality fiction for portraying the Macedonian ruler in a gay relationship with Hephaestion." And this is the headline of the Guardian article they are talking about. Alexander the Great Netflix show labeled extremely poor quality fiction by Greek minister. Of course they are angry. Like I said, Netflix keeps screwing with Greek history. The article says, Greece's Minister for Culture has criticized the Netflix drama documentary about Alexander the Great as extremely poor quality fiction and low content rife with historical inaccuracies. Lina Mendoni's comments about Alexander, the making of a god, come amid a furor over the show's depiction of a romantic relationship between Alexander the Great and his confidant and friend Hephaestion. In Greece, an opinion piece in Eleftheros Typos called the show a distortion of the truth and blamed Oliver Stone's 2004 film Alexander for starting a propaganda campaign about Alexander's homosexuality. If you haven't seen the docuseries, in the first few minutes of the first episode we see Great Alexander kissing Hephaestion. The article also says, Dimitris Natsiou, the president of the Christian Orthodox far-right political party Niki, called the series deplorable, unacceptable and unhistorical, and said it aimed to subliminally convey the notion that homosexuality was acceptable in ancient times, an element that has no basis. Asked in Parliament about the show by Natsiou, Mendoni said it was replete with historical inaccuracies, demonstrates the director's sloppiness and poverty of scenario. Damn. On the show's depiction of the relationship between Alexander and Hephaestion, Mendoni said there is no mention in the sources that it goes beyond the limits of friendship as defined by Aristotle. Oh yes, I know people are really focusing on Alexander's sexuality debate, but there are a lot of historians online analyzing and pointing out the historical inaccuracies throughout the documentary, ranging from the historically inaccurate costumes or Alexander's blue eyes and blonde hair, the inaccurate events, and so on. But more on this later. Mendoni also said, "But you will know that the concept of love in antiquity is broad and multidimensional. We cannot interpret either practices or persons who acted 2,300 years ago by our own measures, our own norms and assumptions. Alexander the Great, for 2,300 years, has never needed, nor does he need now, the intervention of any unsolicited protector of his historical memory or, even more, of his personality and moral standing." Well said. As you know, when Cleopatra documentary happened, Egypt threatened to sue Netflix for inaccurate depiction and falsification of history. But Greece? When Natsio asked whether the government would take action against Netflix, Mendoni said such a move would be unconstitutional. Greece's constitution has protected freedom of art since the early 19th century. The Ministry of Culture does not exercise censorship, does not carry out actions that result in prosecution or ban, does not manipulate, does not limit, does not control the dissemination of information and ideas, neither preventively nor repressively, Mendoni said. The inspiration of artists, personal interpretation, or the judgment of individuals cannot evidently be subjected to a regulatory regime and control, nor can it be governed by the courts or dragged into them. Instead, it is assessed and judged by each of us, by the international community. This is how Netflix is also evaluated. So as you see, this time around, Netflix won't be fighting any lawsuits. It's very noble of Greece to disagree and still respect someone's creative expression and point of view. Alright, so back to the gay or no gay debate. Why did people start to lose their minds over this documentary? Well, it all started with this tweet by End Wokeness account on X. That said, Netflix made a new documentary about Alexander the Great. Within the first 8 minutes, they turned him gay.
I could sit here and argue for like 10 minutes about this, but I'm not going to waste my time because I just know that I'm right.
This tweet got over 11 million views, and the comment section became a battlefield. I'll take a moment here to explain why I don't associate myself with right or left, conservatives or liberals, because this is a perfect situation to explain this. Once you call yourself something, it comes with the whole lot of baggage. And suddenly you are responsible for everything that movement represents, whether you agree with it or not. And in the case of this tweet, those agreeing with End Wokeness tweet, mostly conservatives, were absolutely demolished by the left for not knowing history of ancient Greece. And for the fact that there are scholars who aren't necessarily liberals that agree that great Alexander could be in fact gay or at least bisexual. However, those are the terms that we use today. Today, being one of the alphabet people is your identity. Back in ancient Greece, sex was viewed more as a way to satisfy your need, whether it's a woman or a man, or unfortunately in many cases a young boy. It was an activity. Let's not forget that man in ancient times used sex to establish dominance, kind of what we see today happening in prisons, for example. I'm going to use some help here from Metatron.
So the one thing that all of these blogs, articles and videos have in common is the fact that they all are bathed in selective bias, ignoring every source that contradicts their preconceived ideas, and finally some of the points they bring up are in fact internally contradictive, as I'll demonstrate through a thorough textual analysis and cultural contextualization. So, was Alexander the Great gay? Well, we have no reason to believe that he was gay in the modern sense, with the concepts of homosexual identities attached to a man from 2,400 years ago. Therefore, he was also not an LGBT icon. But was he straight? And is it true that there is no indication whatsoever in the sources that he had any sort of homoerotic attraction or same-sex relations? No, he wasn't straight either. Okay, so what was he? Was he bi? That's where it gets complex, and we need to stop looking at this from the perspective of modern societal understanding. Our world and the world of antiquity do not always align.
Seriously guys, if you're not following Metatron yet, I suggest you do so and watch the full video, because he really breaks it down for us in detail. What was historically correct and incorrect in Netflix series. But when it comes to great Alexander's sexuality, he also said,
Well, when it comes to Alexander and Hephaestion, well, Hephaestion is specifically described as Alexander's eromenos in the sources. Eromenos meaning him who is loved or desired. No doubt about that. And just to be specific, in Greek there are all sorts of terms for love with many different usage patterns. The root stem of this term is eros. This is a word that covers all contexts of romantic love and sexual desire specifically. Moreover, when examining the appropriate cultural context, in the Greek texts we have the mention over and over again of this pair, the eromenos and the erastes. The eromenos is the submissive younger lover and the erastes is the dominant, active and older lover in a male-to-male relation.
if you decide to watch the whole episode by Metatron, he also brings up and reads directly from the sources about it, at the same time mentioning that scholars still debate if those sources are valid. Here is one example of many sources believed to be providing that great Alexander had feelings for Hephaestion.
With that in mind, in Epistle 24 we read, and this is Diogenes speaking to Alexander. He says, "If you wish to be beautiful and good, throw away the rag you have on your head and come to us. Yet you will not be able to do so, for you are held fast by Hephaestion's thighs." There are more elements, they are circumstantial, but still worth of note. In Trogo we read, "For Alexander, Hephaestion is dear due to his beauty, usefulness and obedience." So if there was no sexual interest at all, why would this beauty and youthfulness matter? If they were just friends, obedience would be enough.
So I'm asking again, why is everyone losing their minds over it and calling Netflix woke? Well, Netflix is definitely woke. We can all agree here. But in this case, I think the backlash doesn't come from being upset at historical accuracy or lack of it. I think it's because people are so sick of seeing this everywhere. It's February. Apparently in the UK, it's a LGBTQ History Month. 3 months ago, it was Trans Awareness Week. In 4 months, we have the Pride Month, but of course, it starts way earlier. In Canada, they turned it into Pride season, allegedly, lasting all the way to September. That's not over though. I found this community calendar for LGBTQ. Look at this. Let's just take March. What's happening in March? We have Bisexual Health Awareness Month. Okay. Week varies in March. National LGBT Health Awareness Week. March 10th, National Women and Girls HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. March 20th, National, again, HIV. March 31st, International Transgender Day of Visibility, because some of them are invisible. Then we have April. April 6th, International Asexuality Day. April 10th, National Youth HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. There is a lot of HIV days. Third Friday of April, Day of Silence. That's the best day in April, I guess. April 18th, National Transgender HIV Testing Day. You cannot test on the other days. This is the day. Also on April 18th, Non-Binary Parents Day. So it's 2 in 1. They go test for HIV and then they celebrate being non-binary parents. And then April 26th, Lesbian Visibility Day. Not for invisible lesbians, only for the visible ones. Let's go up till June, until Pride Month. So in May, we celebrate, first Sunday in May, International Family Equality Day. May 17th, International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia. May 19th, National Asian and Pacific Islander HIV/AIDS Awareness. May 22nd, Harvey Milk Day. May 24th, Pansexual and Pan-Romantic Awareness and Visibility Day. And then June. June is the Pride Month, yes? So 1st of June, LGBTQ Families Day. June 12th, Paul's Remembrance. June 15th, anniversary of US Supreme Court Best Stock decision expanding protections to LGBTQ employees. June 26th, anniversary of US Supreme Court legalizing marriage equality. June 27th, National HIV Testing Day again. June 28th, Stonewall Day. June 30th, Queer Youth of Faith Day. And that's only until June. It's HIV and AIDS Day every second day. But then we are offensive. People are tired of LGBTQ. So when trying to watch, just enjoy a documentary about the great Alexander. Just relax and learn about ancient Greece. And seeing it again, it's almost a flip of a table moment for some. And not because they are something phobic. because they are sick of it everywhere. We have Kardashians being shoved into our faces, social media, TV screens, commercials, articles, fashion campaigns. We are sick of seeing them everywhere. So it's exactly the same thing with LGBTQ stuff. Anyway, when it comes to this episode's debate whether Great Alexander was or wasn't gay, both sides have more believable and less believable sources to prove their theories. There is also a lot of debate going on the internet about the subject. I found this one particularly funny and worrying at the same time clip.
So I came across this awesome headline on TMZ. Alexander the Great being gay in Netflix show angers conservatives. So there's end wokeness. So the tweet says, Netflix made a new documentary about Alexander the Great. Within the first 8 minutes, they turned him gay.
Documentary? How did they get this footage? Where did
I didn't even think about that.
It's incredible. Netflix is incredible. Wow, we finally got footage of Alexander the Great making out with some guy.
Of course nothing is fucking gayer than the ancient Greeks.
Okay.
They're wearing gladiator sandals on the daily.
Ancient Greece was incredibly gay. The Olympics, the original
Yes.
Olympics, they were doing it naked.
They invented the loincloth.
Oiled up dudes. None of these things that you're saying are true about Greece. But,
I think they were actually drunk on this podcast, so can't be super critical. But stating that wearing sandals and participating in Olympic Games in nude made ancient Greece gay is just not very smart to say. To be clear, I couldn't care less if Great Alexander was gay or not. It does not change my life. It does not impact me in any way or form. I have no skin in the game. I'm happy to accept any truer truth. But it certainly matters for historians and to Greeks. And it surely matters to gay people who find it somehow reassuring. If Great Alexander was gay, whatever we do today is justified. And I think this is another thing that's annoying. Sexuality then, as I said, was different than today. For example, in the 1900s, this was not considered gay. Different times. If Great Alexander had a male lover, and if he was sleeping with younger boys, was deemed okay because he was a monarch, does not justify craziness of our times. You would think as people we evolved enough to know that, but apparently no. What's funny is that there is such a sense of desperation to prove people in the past were gay. Representatives of LGBTQ community read that ancient Greece allegedly had relations with little boys, and the reaction is to proudly wave the rainbow flag at the news. Just calm down. Great Alexander is not your gay hero. Get over it. Some journalists even use the Great Alexander documentary as an opportunity for LGBTQ history lesson. Here is an article from The Guardian again. If you're raging that Netflix made Alexander the Great gay, it's time to learn some LGBTQ+ history. And this Matt Kane says, for centuries, LGBTQ+ history has been wiped from the record. Oppressors have found it all too easy to deny our existence because in most of the world, for most of history, our lives have had to be led in secret. Exposure could lead to familial rejection, social and professional ruin, imprisonment, torture, and even execution. Any evidence of queer lives that did exist was often destroyed, sometimes by descendants keen to protect reputations. He also writes, of course, labels such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender didn't exist for most of history, making it impossible to know definitively how any figure would have identified in their own time. But it would be ridiculous to use this as justification for erasing us from the past. The understanding of our sexuality contributing to any sense of identity, rather than just sexual activity, may be a relatively modern one, but we have always been there. Well, obviously, gay people have always been there, but again, it was viewed very differently and was almost part of classism. Emperors could have sex with whoever they wanted, but it was forbidden amongst the lower class. Anyway, Greeks on Reddit did not agree with the minister's opinion on Great Alexander's sexuality. Here are some comments. Αν αυτό μας πείραξε στη σειρά, τότε είμαστε περισσότερο ανιστορητοί από ό,τι πίστευα. Which means, if this bothered us in the series, then we are more ahistorical than I thought. Well, yeah, Great Alexander accomplished so many things worth talking about. His sexuality is like a little bleep when it comes to stories about him. For those who don't know, Great Alexander was a Macedonian. If you want more details about Great Alexander, just head to Metatron's channel. Another comment said, αφού ήταν όντως, αν όχι ομοφιλόφιλος, σίγουρα αμφιφιλόφιλος. Δεν τους φταίει το Netflix αν δεν θέλουν να μάθουν ιστορία. And the translation, he was gay or at least bisexual, it's not Netflix's fault, people don't want to learn history. So the debate on the topic is going strong, even in Greece. I'm obviously not a historian, so I give you guys a full pass on schooling me in the comments. Correct me, give everyone watching extra information, or even a history lesson. I'm sure there are plenty of you that know much more about the subject than I do. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notifications to never miss another Daily Freddo episode. And for even more content, check out my Patreon account and follow me on Instagram at Daily Freddo. That's all for today. Have a good one.
I could sit here and argue for like 10 minutes about this, but I'm not going to waste my time because I just know that I'm right.